Blog Talk Radio.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot, oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls Radio. And tonight we have another incredible health breakthrough show for you. We have a tremendous guest. His name is Dr. Hannibal Miles. We are going to be talking about amazing cancer breakthroughs, new tests, new treatments, and we're going to be talking about chronic illness, Epstein-Barr, Lyme disease, you name it, we're going to have it covered tonight, so stay tuned. And first, let's check in with PK. PK, how are you tonight?
We're doing just fine. The winds have got me sounding a little bit like a frog, but it's the way it is. In Arizona, the winds have been blowing crazy today, and, of course, all that lovely pollen. Woohoo!
Oh, lucky you. So tell us, what's going on with the numbers? What's happening? The world is still crazy, but tell us what you're seeing coming up for us.
Well, I've taken a look at things going umpteen different directions. This is a month of major changes, and it's being in charge, being in control. And there's not a lot that's balancing or feels like it's balanced. And if we take a look at our own personal numbers, our information that we need to take a look at is our own tool to help us make through some of these things that are taking place. Your birthday is very important because that number of your birthday shows a lot about who you are and how to work with things. And understanding how to make it better, don't let yourself get frustrated when things don't seem to work out just right, because it is a 1 month. It's about our making fresh starts and new beginnings. But it seems like somebody's hung a little bit of an anchor on our backside so we can't go quite as fast as we'd like to, unfortunately. But we need to consider the numbers. If you look at your month and day of birth, add those together to a single digit. That tells us a lot about what's going on. But each number of our name, each letter has a number to it. And we're getting conflicting information going on. The universe is trying to lead. We've got the planetary aspects doing all kinds of crazy things. So there's nothing that I would right now consider normal. We're getting ready to go into some planets that are going to be going retrograde on us, on top of this wanting to be in charge, be in control, and it's not happening. So I'm going to put something out every day on my webpage. The Facebook page. What I put out every day will give you a hint of what's going on. But it's hard to make a decision of what to do and what not to do. We get conflicting answers going back and forth for us. To get a chance to get along better with ourselves, we're going to have to stop and take a look at every number in our birth date, our month and our day. Each represents something. But every letter of our name also represents something about us. So I'm going to try to post something that tells you what each number represents and see if that won't help give you some trigger to make some changes that'll be to your betterment. It's kind of crazy right now. Nothing feels comfortable. Nothing feels calm. Everything feels a bit out of control. And like I said, it is a 1. 1 says fresh starts and new beginnings. But it's like, as I said, having an anchor on our backside. We're trying to go forward. It's not letting it happen. we're getting pulled back. And there's too many things in the outer world that is not going according to what we would consider the norm, whether it's what we hear from the government, what we hear from people that we're talking with. Nothing feels normal. It's like having one of those paddles with a rubber band and a ball to it that you keep bouncing up and down. You throw it up and it keeps coming back, but it hits in a different place. So it's just trying to hold tight and make it work as best we can.
All right. And for everybody that wants to take a look at their individual numbers, go to patriciakirkman.com, and you will find all the information there. And if you want to get a hold of PK for an individual reading, you can find her there. You can also find her at supernaturalgirls.com, either place. So, yes, it's really interesting to watch what's happening around us, especially with UFOs. There was a new study that came out, a new report saying that most Americans believe that UFOs are real, and they also know that the government's lying to them about it. What a surprise. Well, our audience already knew that. That's old news to us, but now it's coming out from CBS, of all places, mainstream media. So just keep an eye on everything. There's a lot of things going on with UFOs. We're supposed to get the report June 1. It will not have everything in it. I am sure of that. But just keep watching our Facebook page, because we'll be posting whatever we're finding out from the underground and from what mainstream is going to try to convince you of. So,
well, and you also notice the military and coming back with stories that they were having to keep quiet on before, and now they're starting to say, "Yeah, I've seen this for years. We used to see this all the time." And
yeah, because you were on military bases, so you've got very used to all of this. So here we go, everybody. It's wild times. But tonight, again, we have just a terrific show about health. But one more thing I just want to share with you before we bring Dr. Miles on the show. Someone brought this to my attention. We've been talking about the Grab-Avoid codes for changing your life, manifestation. Well, there's a new level of codes here by someone by the name of Agesta. So I'm going to give you one of Agesta's codes. They do this a little differently. This is channeled information, and we've been giving you a lot of prosperity codes because that's what you asked for. So here's another one, and this is something you repeat 45 times, and they suggest making knots on a string, 45 knots on a string, kind of like rosary beads, I guess, if you want to compare it to that. And you just repeat the number. Here's the number that you guys have been asking for. It's very similar to the 520 number, which is unexpected money. This one is 897. So give it a try, 897, and let us know what happens. We still are getting all kinds of stories back from you on success with these numbers, and that's what we like to hear, is all the success and all the fun you're having with it. So give that a try. Let us know how it goes. And now for our show. Let me introduce our guest. Hannibal Miles, naturopathic doctor, completed his undergraduate studies at Washington and Jefferson College, achieving a BA in Business Administration with minors in Chemistry and Spanish, as well as completing the pre-health track. Though originally on the path towards a traditional medical education, he found his passion in natural, holistic, and preventative forms of medical care. He went on to attend the University of Bridgeport College of Naturopathic Medicine. There he graduated with honors and with a doctorate degree in naturopathic medicine and masters in human nutrition. His thesis, entitled "Breakfast May Not Be the Most Important Meal of the Day: The Benefits of Intermittent Fasting on Health, Exercise, and Muscle Growth," was accepted in the university's Faculty Research Day in 2018. As a certified nutrition specialist, Dr. Miles seeks to guide individuals in appropriate, specific diet plans tailored to their needs. Now, Dr. Miles also specializes in detox, weight loss, longevity, cancer prevention and treatment, and he uses an integrative and holistic approach in treating these and many other ailments, including high cholesterol, hypertension, diabetes, allergies, gastrointestinal issues, and autoimmunity. By employing an integrative and holistic approach, Dr. Miles is able to get to the root cause, which is so important, of illness in order to elevate health and well-being. Dr. Miles, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's our pleasure. We have so many questions for you. And first of all, what was it that got you so interested in health and wellness?
Well, it's funny because I don't have that, how most doctors have that story where they had like a family member or they had a personal experience that kind of brought them to medicine. Mine actually happened after graduating undergrad, and that's kind of where I discovered the natural side of medicine. I was originally on the traditional medical school route, the traditional allopathic school route, and then I realized that I used to suffer from acne a lot, and then I would go to the dermatologist, and they would just prescribe a steroid or a topical cream, and to me that just never felt right. While I was applying for medical school, I randomly found naturopathic medicine just by Googling holistic doctor, and then I saw that there was a 4-year track comparable to a medical school that specializes in natural medicine. I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. This speaks more to my heart. I always viewed drugs as, kind of covering up the symptoms and not getting to the root cause of the issue. And of course, there's a place for that, but I feel like a lot of the conventional medicine really, overlooks the actual cause of disease. And then I applied to go to University of Bridgeport, was accepted, and then, the rest is history. It's how I became a naturopathic doctor.
Well, it's very exciting what you're involved with, and I know a lot of people today, when they get a diagnosis of cancer, it's terrifying. And it's a huge landscape. A lot of people don't know which way to turn if they want something other than traditional treatment or in addition to traditional treatment. It's very difficult to navigate that landscape. But you have quite a few tools in your arsenal, and one of them is the RGCC test. Now, tell everybody, if you would, about this test. It's quite remarkable.
So the RGCC, they have a number of tests specific to treating, well, not necessarily treating, but really analyzing cancer on different levels. The one test that's the most popular and the most that gives us the most detail is called the Onconomics Plus. And this test consists of 4 different parts. It tells you the amount of circulating tumor cells in the body. Now, circulating tumor cells are important, so let me just break this down for you. With cancer, you tend to have a primary tumor in some region of the body. Now, part of that, those cells that are from the tumor can break off and land in different areas, and that's called metastasis. And that's really where the danger of cancer lies. When it spreads to some other part of the body, lands in, say, the liver or the lung or someplace that's detrimental, that's where the dangers of cancer really lie. So that first part of the test will tell you how many circulating tumor cells are within your body. The second part of the test will actually tell you the genetics of the cancer cells. Now, a lot of people, when they come to me, they say, oh, I've already had my genetics tested and cancer doesn't run in my family. Now, it's good to know that cancers are generally 5 to 10% genetic. The rest is very environmentally caused. So we rarely see patients that have a genetic disposition to cancer, or that we can say that this was the cause of the cancer. A lot of it is environmental. But the genetics that we're talking about in this test is specific to the cancer cells themselves, not to the family history. So with knowing the genetics of the cancer cells, we're able to target different defects in the cancer cells that allow us to kill it. Honestly, a cancer cell becomes cancer. So cancer is basically is our normal cells, but it becomes cancerous because there are certain portions of the cell cycle that have dysfunction. So with this genetic portion of the test, we're locating those dysfunctions and triggering a process called apoptosis, which means the cell is going to kill itself, or we give it certain supplements that help it kill itself. So that's why that genetic portion of the test is very important, and we use a lot of natural supplements and therapies to really affect the cancer cells. Now, the third part of the test is it will tell you, we take your cancer cells and we test it against all the chemotherapies that are out there. It's called the chemosensitivity test. So what the RGCC test does is it after testing the cells, it'll give you a rate from 0 to 100% of how sensitive the cells were in terms of the chemotherapies, basically killing the cells. And what's special about RGCC is that they don't just test the cells one time to see if it killed it, because cancer cells, cancer is really deadly when it mutates. So what they do is they'll test the cells through 6 rounds of that chemotherapy. Now, if it makes it past that 6th round, we know that's a strong chemotherapy, and that'll yield a really high percentage. So when we get back test results, we'll see which chemotherapies yield back a high percentage, and we'll often advocate for the oncologist to choose and select that specific chemotherapy. And not only does it do that for chemos, it'll do it for immunotherapies, biological substances. And then now we're going to move on to the fourth part of the test, which it does it for the natural substances. So the same way it tests for the chemotherapies, it tests for natural substances such as vitamin C, curcumin, alpha-lipoic acid, mistletoe, mushrooms. So just a wide variety of natural substances that we can test to see what kills the cancer cells. So it's really a really comprehensive test, and I mean, it's done in Greece, and it is an expensive test, so you can't be covered by insurance. But I mean, I think you're pretty much getting a great overall picture with with that test.
Well, yes, because in typical treatment, it's a one-size-fits-all. You have this kind of cancer, we're going to give you this particular chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, whatever, because this is what we do for all the patients, right? So this is so much more specific, and instead of shotgunning, it's really very laser-like in its application. So as a patient, you would know exactly where you stand and what's going to work and what isn't. That is tremendous.
Exactly. And even for patients who decide right off the bat that they don't want to do chemotherapy, we usually recommend them to even do that section of the test. You can do the test without the chemotherapy section, but we say, God forbid something happens down the line where, you may need to resort to chemotherapy, and at least we have the one that works specifically for you instead of blindly choosing, going off of studies. You're going off of actual lab results.
Yes, and it's too bad this isn't covered by insurance, because think of the time and energy and also the health benefits of all of this. It's a shame it's not covered. Why isn't it covered? Is it because it's done out of the country?
It's a little bit of, it's kind of two things. So it's, yes, because it's done out of the country. However, there are tests that will test for the circulating tumor cells in America that is covered under insurance, but that's all you're getting is the circulating tumor cells. There's a test called Biocept. Cell Search is the one that's FDA approved, and you can get the circulating tumor cell markers. However, their specificity and sensitivity is nowhere near to the strength that the RGCC's test is. So that's why I always kind of promote my patients to do the Greek test as opposed to any of the ones in the United States. I mean, the ones in the United States, for someone who's financially, not capable of getting that test, then I will work with the ones that we have in the United States. But I've always, promote the Greek test because it's just so comprehensive.
Yeah, it's a tool that I would think any cancer patient would want to have. Now, course, I'm getting a lot of questions here in text asking how much is the test. So what is the cost of the test?
So the test ranges anywhere between $2,400 and $2,600. The reason being is because it is done. The cost is basically off of the standard of the euro. So depending on what the euro to the dollar ratio is, it's around $2,400 to $2,600.
Yeah, that's. I know for a lot of people that's they can't afford it, but there are a lot of people who can, and it's something they'd want to have. Now, one of the things that surprised me is that there are supplements and things that you can take that actually feed cancer. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so one supplement that many people know as being very helpful is glutathione, and that is your body's number one antioxidant, and it's very good in terms of detoxing and getting rid of toxins. However, cancer cells are your own cells, and they're very smart. So when our body uses glutathione, it uses it to detox toxins. The liver uses it in terms of making sure the cells are functioning properly. And the cancer cells take the glutathione and use it to actually protect themselves and keep themselves alive. So the RGCC test, it'll give you a certain marker. If it's above a certain percentage, then you know that the cancer cell is using that glutathione to keep itself alive. So, the RGCC test will also tell us what supplements we should, but also can tell us what things we shouldn't use as well.
Now, that's really important because, I mean, a lot of people I know take glutathione, and if they had cancer, they would not have a clue that it could, in fact, be making it grow. So that becomes an extremely important piece of information.
Right, exactly. And this is why I also say especially when you're delving into, the more alternative and natural field, it's very important to get someone who is versed in that field. Someone who will work with your oncologist, or even have an oncologist that is open to that pathway, because there's so many patients that I've gotten where, their oncologist is nowhere near being open to anything alternative. They go, directly by the book. And it's not necessarily a bad thing when, you have an oncologist that understands your pathology, but if they're not accepting of any other, forms of treatments that may be additional that may help you, then, it's really better to have a team of people that can attack your cancer cells from different angles as opposed to just one straight shot.
That makes total sense, and I mean, God forbid, if I ever had something like that, I would want you on my team because you are an expert with nutrition and supplements. And the other thing I understand from talking with you previously is that we also need to be aware of changing out the supplements. So you can't just be on the same supplement program ad infinitum.
Exactly.
You really have to change. Tell us why that is.
So the cancer, like I was saying before, the cancer cells are very intelligent. They're doing anything they can to keep themselves alive. And a cancer is a cancer because there's defects in their cell cycle and their lifespan, and those defects do anything to keep them alive. So cancer cells are very apt to mutating, and cancer cells can one, divide rapidly and replicate, and then they mutate very rapidly. So because the cancer cells can mutate very rapidly, if you use one treatment, the cancer cells will get used to that treatment, and the ones that survive will now become immune to that treatment. So now this doesn't happen right away, but when the cancer cells become immune, then the treatment just becomes less functional. And then what we do with the RGCC test is we rotate the supplements. So for the first month, you'll do a set of supplements. The second month, we'll switch over to a completely different set of supplements so that the cancer cells never get used to a certain supplement. So even if we go back to the old ones, we didn't have it on for a long enough period of time where the cancer cells would have gotten used to it and become immune. So we do a set of rotating supplements, different supplements from the first month, the second month, the third month, or the fourth month. However, we also will keep a baseline or a foundational group of supplements on for the whole time. these supplements are more specific to the genetic factors that I talked about on the second part of the test, where when you're affecting these certain genetics, those genetic defects will always be there. That point is not something that the cancer cells will mutate. So that's why we leave those supplements in order to affect those specific genetic points.
Can you give us an example on what types of supplements you would run throughout the treatment? I know it's different for everybody, but just some examples.
Yeah, definitely. So I generally like to use curcumin, EGCG, grapeseed extract, and melatonin more for breast cancer patients. The reason why those four really attack many different genes at one time, and because it has that variability, it's able to kill the cancer cells a lot quicker. And I want to be able to keep that on throughout treatment. And a lot of those supplements also help a lot of the conventional, whether that's chemotherapies, immunotherapies. So it's really a synergistic effect. And on top of that, those supplements can be used at higher dosages. Most people will take, will go off the bottle of 2 capsules per day. But when you're dealing with cancer, cancer came on strong. We have to fight with it strong. So we definitely up the dosage of a lot of supplements.
Well, and I can see why, my goodness, you really need to have somebody like you who's so knowledgeable, because there are so many supplements out there and so many treatments in the natural world that are being reported, and you don't even know what might conflict with not only your personal cancer genetics, but also with other supplements that you're taking, right? Because you don't want to do that either.
Exactly. Yeah. They run off of different pathways, and you don't want certain things to interact with others. So it's really important that you have someone that is really diligent about your supplemental protocol. And even, working with conventional oncologists, they're not as knowledgeable about the supplements, and some of them are not open. That's why it's very important to really have a team of people that are, coordinated in your care.
Right, because you don't want to invest in all of these supplements and all of this time and effort in whatever treatment you decide on, and then find out that you have pieces that are conflicting. So, yeah, the team effort really makes a big difference, a huge difference. And right now, is your practice consisting mostly of cancer patients?
Yeah, I mainly see cancer patients. I'd say about 75 to 80% of my practice is cancer patients, along with a few weight loss and recently just a whole growth in Lyme patients.
Wow. Well, before we get into that, because I know we were going to talk about Lyme disease also, I have a question about follow-up with this particular blood test from RGCC, which you can find this online at, is it rgcc.com, Dr. Miles? Is that where they should go?
rgccusa.com.
USA.com, that's right, because it's not based here. So, yes, and also if you want to get a hold of Dr. Miles, how should people get a hold of you?
You can email me directly at info, I-N-F-O, at drhannibalmiles.com. That's HANNIBALMILES. Great.
So there are follow-up tests also that this company offers. Tell us about the follow-up tests.
So with the follow-up test, it's not as expensive as the main test. You get the main test first, and then 3 to 6 months later, you'll follow up with either just the circulating tumor cells, or another test called the OncoTrace. We really track the circulating tumor cells because that's the best picture of what we have in terms of seeing the risk for metastases or the severity of the cancer. With most cancers, we want it to be below 5 cells per 75 milliliters of blood, and then once we hit that benchmark, we want to be below 2. Now, the further and closer we are to 0, that will have less of a risk to be metastatic. Now, the other test I just mentioned, the OncoTrace, that includes the circulating tumor cells, but in addition to that, it also gives you other genetic markers, not from the Onconomics Plus, not from the first test, but other genetic markers that show a risk of metastases. So that's why it's very important to follow up with that test to make sure that we're moving along the right track, because that test will tell us whether we need to either do a more aggressive therapy, switch out supplements, maybe there's more genetic factors that we missed the first time. So really doing your diligent follow-up is going to be key to your success. And in addition to that, the RGCC also has other therapies that we can do in addition to the supplement protocol yielded from the first test.
And what are those therapies?
One that I specifically work with a medical doctor who does is called the SOT. That stands for short oligonucleotide therapy. It's a long name. Basically, it's just a DNA strand that is created in the lab based off of your cancer cells. So from a general blood draw, we send the blood out to Greece. They extract your cancer cells, and they make a DNA molecule specific to your cancer cells that actually go in, they get injected into you when they give us the therapy, and it tells the cancer cells to basically kill itself, basically turn off. So it stops the replication of those cancer cells directly. And that
now, is
is what
that
therapy
vaccine,
is.
or is this something totally different from a vaccine?
No, so it's not. It's a different therapy from the vaccine. So because it is a DNA strand, people are thinking, this is similar to the COVID vaccine, but this is it's specific to turning off the cancer cells' replication ability. And we can use this for, it's not necessarily promoting an immune system response, it's more directly killing the cancer cell. So we can use this for not only cancer cells, but we can use this for viruses, such as Epstein-Barr, varicella, cytomegalovirus, or even Lyme.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, so many people are suffering with Epstein-Barr and Lyme and all these other viruses. There's not a lot of great, effective ways to deal with these things. So this works for that as well. That's tremendous. That's great. Do they go through the
really
same protocol then, Dr. Miles? They go through the same kind of test? I mean, this one is specific to cancer, but does RGCC have tests specific to viruses?
So they do, actually. It's called the Prime Spot. And so they do accept your regular, the test that we do here in order to run it. However, the Prime Spot is more specific. It's a much more specific test in terms of tracking treatment. In the United States, we don't have the specific test to track. Well, let me correct that. We do have the specific test. It's just harder to obtain, and it's not covered by insurance. So, with the Prime Spot, you're able to track reactivation of viruses. You're able to track to see if you're actually getting better in terms of the viral load with that Prime Spot test. So you don't have to go through it. It's not the same test as the cancer cells with the Onconomics Plus. It's a completely different test that will give you a range and severity of your virus level. So then when you get the SOT, we can track it through that. And a lot of the generic tests that we do in the United States that are done by conventional doctors, there's no way to track that. So that's why the Prime Spot test is very applicable to someone, say, suffering from a reactivation of something, and it's not showing up in your conventional labs, and then your conventional doctors say, oh, you're not suffering from an active infection, when in fact it's really a chronic situation that can't be picked up by our tests.
Right. Oh, my goodness. I had no idea that there was that adjunct therapy and treatment and tracking. That's for viruses. That's great, because so many people have it. I think you were mentioning a statistic that was quite high. Was it Epstein-Barr that you said over 95% of the people have it?
Yeah, that was a lot. over 90 to 95% of people have been exposed to Epstein-Barr in their lifetime. So if you were to do an IgG test, which is just an antibody response, about 90% of the people would have a positive response. So they have had an exposure to Epstein-Barr in their life.
And it can get reactivated, so it can go away and it can come back.
Right. It can it usually gets reactivated in times of stress, which nowadays who isn't stressed out?
I was going to say, forget that one. I'm going to have it forever.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, here's a question from someone in our audience. Laura wrote this. She's asking, what about patients in remission? They live fearing when it might come back, and often it's more aggressive. Will this test help find indicators of what those chances are?
I'm so glad that your audience member asked that question, because the RGCC test is literally the best for patients in remission, because what generally happens, so say for instance someone has breast cancer, is that they have stage 1, tumors removed, and then the doctor says, oh, you have clean margins. There's nothing there. Come back. You'll do your 6-month MRIs, ultrasounds, mammograms, and you'll be on your way. And what happens is that people, the tests never get picked up by the scans, and then they come back and then they have cancer. This is why the circulating tumor cells is so important, because even after you get the surgery to get the cancer out, we're tracking your circulating tumor cells every 3 to 6 months. So if we see a spike in your circulating tumor cells, we have a better judgment way earlier than any scan that there may be cancer brewing. So that's why it's very important to really track with those circulating tumor cells. Now, and in terms of any other markers, there's the conventional cancer cell markers. So for breast cancer, for instance, there's CA15-3, CA27-29. Those are the conventional markers. Now, with the RGCC, we'll use the OncoTrace that I talked about before. That'll give you the circulating tumor cell number, but they also have specialized cancer OncoTraces. They call them OncoTrails. So there's a breast OncoTrail, a sarcoma OncoTrail, a prostate OncoTrail, and it has those specific genetic markers for those cancers. So if those start lighting up, then we know we have to, prepare and, start attacking these cancer cells.
Right. Now, how important is diet with all of this?
Extremely important. Diet is the foundation of where your health is now and where your health will be in the future. So, to me, a change in your that's one thing that I definitely look at when it's one of my pillars that I look at when looking at the causes of cancer. So you want to look at the diet. You want to look at in terms of the environmental pictures. You want to look at the diet. You want to look at toxins, specifically pesticides, heavy metals, mold. But overall, nutrition is the main one. Nutrition is something you're constantly eating every single day, and what you put into your body does make a difference. You really shouldn't let if you hear a doctor that says that diet has nothing to do with your illness, then run, because that's right. Completely not true at all. And that's what I got when I was younger, in terms of when I was suffering from acne, and I changed my diet completely, and kind of pretty much reversed my acne symptoms. So with cancer, you don't want to create an inflammatory state. Cancer feeds on inflammation, so that's why cancer feeds on sugar, which is why I never understood when a conventional doctor would. Now, there's a time and place for conventional. That I don't want to sound like I'm against conventional, because I'm not. I work with a lot of conventional doctors, and
sure.
I love what they do and I respect what they do. It's just that when they're talking more into my field in nutrition, I'm against you, because you went through chemotherapy. Now you should eat ice cream to fatten yourself up. To me, that just doesn't make any sense. You're creating more inflammation in your body, and you're feeding the cancer cells. So, being strict with your diet is very important in terms of starving the cancer cells of you want to make sure that you're not feeding into the cancer cell cycle. So you want to be able to starve the cancer cells and promote their death.
Because it is an environment, right, that you're trying to change. It's not just getting rid of the cancer. It's changing the whole environment that created it in the first place. So you're talking about
exactly. That's the best way. That's the best way to put it.
Yeah, that's
you're
really
mentioning
important.
sugar. Is there something besides the sugar that also acts as a catalyst to this?
Sugar is just the main source for inflammation. Now, there's some cancers. Prostate is more a saturated fat feeder, but it's mainly sugar and anything inflammatory. So sugar is inflammatory. Refined carbohydrates is inflammatory. Processed foods are inflammatory. Some artificially salted foods can be inflammatory. Even peanuts at times can be inflammatory. It's not necessarily. Sometimes it's not even necessarily the foods themselves; it's what they add to the foods that end up being inflammatory. So, fruits and vegetables are all great for you, but it's really important that they are organic, they are non-GMO. You don't want anything that is processed in your system. Organic fruits and vegetables have a lot more nutrients than non-organic, and you really want that nutrient. You don't want to be suffering from some sort of nutritional deficiency while you're fighting off cancer. So you really want to prepare your body in the best way to be ready to fight cancer.
Is there any one particular diet, or do you go with a variety based on what type of cancer people have? Because I know there's a lot being said about keto and all of these other things. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm a proponent of keto, more in the short term than necessarily long term. For cancer, yes, I could see it because you're not giving your body that sugar. Like keto is very beneficial. However, you have to be ensure that your keto diet is not just all meat and nuts or something like that. You still have to make sure that you're getting proper what is called phytonutrients, which are found in a lot of vegetables and fruits, and that really helps. It really provides a lot of antioxidants and nutritional support not found in the ketogenic diet. So I more look at what the patient's already eating and what their diet currently is, and then make changes to that. I don't necessarily go, this one diet, fits for this particular, with a one diet fits all. I'm not really a proponent of a one diet fits all. I like to be more individualized with people's diets. Yeah,
that makes sense. Because everybody has their own way of looking at nutrition and also what works for them. I mean, how about dairy and gluten? Do you find that those are aggravating the cancer and also other chronic illnesses?
Yeah, so dairy and gluten are probably one of the top 3 inflammatory foods out there. And I tend to have patients be dairy and gluten-free as much as possible. We also run a test off of a company called US Biotech. There's many different food sensitivity companies out there, but we run food sensitivity tests, and it'll tell you exactly what foods are creating inflammation in your body. And we try to limit the amount of inflammation in the body, because inflammation is just a proponent for cancer and chronic disease. So some people forget that it's also inflammation is really the gasoline for chronic disease.
And I know we were discussing this before off the air, that there really isn't a good response from traditional medical care for chronic illness. Autoimmune disease, Lyme disease, Epstein-Barr, all of those things fall under that heading. And I've personally watched this and I'm appalled, because in traditional medicine it's just giving prescriptions for the most part. So what do you do with patients that have chronic illness?
So, again, it's looking for that root cause, and with chronic illness, there was a certain series of events that got you to that situation, and we look more at the environmental factors. Again, starting with nutrition, but also incorporating the mental, emotional component as well. Stress does, increase inflammation in the body. Stress does play a huge role in your in your mental health, and a lot of autoimmune disease and even cancer comes from stress. Chronic disease, a lot of that comes from stress as well. So in addition to the physical, we do work on the mental, emotional aspect as well. But if we're taking it back to the physical, nutrition, heavy metals, a lot of the same environmental sort causes of cancer can be applied to autoimmune and chronic disease.
That's so interesting. So heavy metal poisoning, that's something you've mentioned several times. How do you handle that? How do you treat that?
First, you have to do what is called either a provocation test, or you can do a test by blood. However, blood only really shows you the amount of heavy metal exposure within 30 days. You want to do either a urine test or a hair test to show you chronic exposure, and that chronic meaning months to years. So you either take what's called a provocation, either a pill called DMSA or EDTA from your medical doctor, and that it's a process called chelation. So chelation, it binds to the metals and pulls it safely out of your system. So then when they test the urine, we'll see how much metals come out. And you'd be surprised at how much heavy metal toxicity is out there. And heavy metals really dampen the immune system and weaken the immune system. So even whenever we're doing some sort of protocol, we want to make sure that heavy metals are out, because it'll really help all the supplements and everything that we're doing work a lot better.
Definitely. Now, where do these heavy metals hang out in your body? Is it in the bloodstream, in the organs, in the skin? Do they just infect everything? What happens with heavy metals?
So they mainly get stored in the fat cells. So any toxins in general get stored in the fat cells. So the more fat cells you have, then the more toxins you tend to store. But they can be stored in organs, bones, anywhere. So that's why it's important to get a chelator, something that can bind to it and pull it out of the tissues. And so that's what sometimes people will just do the blood test instead of doing a provocation test, and the blood test shows nothing, but the provocation is pulling it out of the tissue. So then you're getting a kind of a sample size of how much heavy metal toxicity is in your body. And then once we have that, we can work on a treatment protocol to slowly detoxify your system of these heavy metals. And it's important, to kind of have someone that understands the protocol, because when you're pulling out heavy metals, not only do you want it out of the tissues, you need to make sure it gets out of the body properly. So you really have to work on, what is the patient having bowel movements daily? Are they sweating enough? Are they doing saunas? Things that help promote detoxification. Are they drinking enough water? Even, you'd be surprised, obviously, probably not anymore, but there's a lot of people that you'd be surprised what they think, how much water you should drink in a day, and what counts and what doesn't count as water. Coffee, doesn't count as water. Coffee is a diuretic. It will actually caffeinated coffee will actually pull water out of your system. So, you really want to make sure you're drinking at least half your body weight in ounces in water.
Oh, okay. That's quite a bit.
That is.
Yeah. Depending on how much you weigh, it could be quite a bit. But the average FDS is 64 ounces of water, and I'm actually happy with that if I see patients doing that, because most people don't really get to half their body weight in ounces. But ideally, you want half your body weight in ounces. It really helps with detoxification and just promoting overall health.
And what about, now you were also a certified IV specialist, and I've heard about chelation, IV chelation. Is that one of the things that people use to get rid of the heavy metal poisoning?
So you can. Because I work with Dr. Fratellone in New York City, I got IV certified, so I have I understand the process, but I can't actually do the IVs because of the laws in New York State, or even in Connecticut. Naturopaths aren't allowed to do IVs, so it's done under a medical doctor, and he uses EDTA for chelation. EDTA is a compound that binds highly more to lead than other metals, but we do IV chelations in terms of getting out lots of different heavy metals. We can do it through IV, we can even do it through suppositories, and we can do it orally as well.
So there's all kinds of ways for people to get rid of that. Yeah, what is the reason for this? Why so much heavy metal poisoning today?
Well, heavy metals can be found in your drinking supply. I mean, a lot of people now have filters on water, but some people have the traditional Brita filter, which doesn't really capture all the heavy metals. There's heavy metals can be found in there's people who live in old houses even when they were younger with lead paint. People who have done have even people who get MRIs, even though gadolinium is seen as an inert metal, it comes up high in people's systems and it is in your body. So it's something that you do want to get out. Even so, one thing that I don't know if people aren't aware of, they used to have fillings used to be done with mercury, and I'm not sure if there's still. I think it's kind of been outdated. Most people know now not to get mercury fillings, but a lot of people have them in their mouth still, and if that leaks, or then you have heavy metal toxicity, and it's really important to get those fillings out and replace them if you still have a mercury filling.
Yeah, that's a really important thing to do from what I've read about all of that. So that is really, really fascinating. So between the stress level that we all have in today's crazy world, mercury fillings or other exposure, whether it's through pesticides too, because are there heavy metals in pesticides? So if people are not eating organically, they may be ingesting this stuff.
Exactly. And, like you said, the pesticides, but even toxic chemicals in general. There's a test that will actually test for all the different toxic chemicals that are out there, and you can see how much of them are in your system. That gasoline or little random compounds that you don't even think of, that are in your deodorants, shampoos, hair dye, things like that build up in your system and in your body. It's not supposed to be in your body, and your body still has to detoxify and deal with that. And when it's in your body consistently, you're creating a breeding ground for disease.
Wow, there's just so much. And even for women, makeup, I've heard, can have a lot of toxins in it, nail polish, things like that.
Right, exactly. It's things that we put on our bodies daily, will accumulate in our system.
Yeah,
you don't think
okay. I know, PK, we may have to stop getting your nails done. I don't know.
Oh, God, I'll start wearing gloves.
We may have to find another way. But, no, all of these things accumulate, so it's not just one thing. It's all these household cleaners that we may be using, too, right?
Yeah, anything that's in the air you can breathe that in as well. It's really important to make sure that your detox pathways are working well. Sweating, urinating, again with drinking water, making sure that you have normal bowel movements. Now it's funny when I ask patients, what are their bowel movements like? They say, oh, it's normal. Normal can range from 2 to 3 times a day. I've heard. And I've heard once a week, and that people think that's normal. That's not a normal bowel movement. So I always ask, how many bowel movements do you have, daily? Because you should be going to the bathroom daily 1 to 2 times per day, and make sure you're getting all your toxins out of your system. Especially in the world that we live in with a lot of there's certain things that you just can't control, but you can control how you detox for the most part. So it's really important that you pay attention to that, and if you're not detoxing appropriately, try to add and implement more ways to detox in your life.
Yeah, that's really important. Now, one of the things I've heard repeatedly from a lot of different cancer programs and cancer patients is the use of coffee enemas, now that we're on this topic. And is that something that is often included as a part of a protocol for either autoimmune or cancer patients?
Yeah, I'm a proponent of enemas. I don't like daily enemas. I prefer you to really get the foundation of having a natural bowel movement. However, with cancer, we want to be able to detox quickly and effectively. So I do, if patients are comfortable with enemas and doing coffee enemas, then I do guide them through that process. I am a fan of colonics, or they call it colonic hydrotherapy. I actually got my first time I done one was about in March, and I got off the table and I was like, I'm never doing this again. And then I felt amazing the next day, and then I'm just like, I'm definitely doing this again.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But I like to see anything that I tell my patient to do. I like to have tried it first. I don't want to just be the one to say, you should do this, you should do that, and I've never tried it myself. And then it's better. I'm better. I can be a better guide if I've done it myself. So I like to do a lot of the things that I tell my patients to do as well. And I am a proponent of colonics. You definitely, you're cleaning out years of impacted feces that, it's just stored disease in there. So when you get that out of your system, it's just a whole, you've given your immune system and your body a chance to really just kind of breathe a sigh of relief.
Yeah, that's tremendous. And now to have a colonic, there are places that offer this therapy, right? So somebody would go to a medical place or a naturopathic place that is offering that?
Exactly, yeah. There's places that offer colonics. It's pretty readily found in almost every state.
Well, I think that's a great idea, because if your colon's impacted, you may not even know it, right? Because you could be going to the bathroom thinking everything's fine, but yet you have, as you mentioned, years of accumulation just on the inside of the colon just hanging out there.
Right, and the thing with the colonic that's different from an enema is that the colonic will get, your full large intestine, your full bowels, and the colonic really mainly gets just to the sigmoid, just to the small portion of, pretty much the end of your colon. So you're really getting a full clean with the colonic.
Wow, well, that sounds like a good treatment. And what about fasting? Because I see also you're very well versed in intermittent fasting, and tell us about that.
Yes, so fasting, I am a very strong proponent, especially with cancer patients. And if you have someone who's very well versed in fasting around your chemotherapy, there's even studies that show that fasting protects the healthy cells and leaves the cancer cells out, to get killed by the chemotherapy. So you really want to have that protective effect on your cancer, on your normal cells while undergoing a chemotherapy treatment, because the issue with chemotherapy is more the side effects that people face. So if you have that protective layer over your normal cells, you really lessen the chances of side effects. So with fasting, people think like, oh, I need these nutrients to kind of keep me energized and well, but our bodies are actually genetically primed to go certain periods of time without food. Back in the days of the cavemen, or way back when, you would go out and you would hunt and gather in the day, and then at night or in the evening you would feast. So over time, our bodies kind of gotten used to that. It's only recently that we have this kind of breakfast, lunch, and dinner pattern. That's more a societal pattern. It's not necessarily how our bodies are generally primed. When our bodies are fasting for a certain period of time, it's actually turning on the recycle and renew kind of process in our body that allows the cells to get a deep clean and a deep cleanse, releasing all those toxins, healing parts of the body that the body may not be able to get to because it's constantly doing something, whether that's digesting or moving around. But more the digestive process is it is a strong process. It takes a lot of energy to digest food, and when your body has to constantly digest because you're eating breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, snack, then you never give your body that time to really rest and repair. So
when you're talking about in your book about breakfast, that may not be the most important meal of the day. So maybe for some people it's better not to have breakfast. Is that what you're saying?
True. Yeah. So you really get, so the studies have shown that people who have done some sort of caloric restriction or intermittent fasting by skipping breakfast, it allows the body to kind of normalize some of its metabolic markers. So if someone has higher levels of inflammation, high blood sugar, high hemoglobin A1C, there's so many factors that fasting really affects. So fasting is a very systemic treatment for the body, and it really allows you to have less of a metabolic risk. So it really lowers cardiovascular disease risk, lowers total inflammation. And again, like we talked about before, inflammation is the gateway to chronic disease. So anything that can lower inflammation is something that you really want to incorporate into your lifestyle.
So if somebody goes to sleep at, say, 10 o'clock at night, and they get up in the morning and, let's say it's 7 a.m., then they shouldn't eat until about what time if they wanted to participate in the intermittent fasting?
So a popular intermittent fasting protocol is called the 16-8 method, and that's 16 hours fasted and an 8-hour eating window. So 16 hours, you might think that's a long time, but number 8, like you said, 10 p.m. to, what did you say, 7 a.m.?
Right. Something like that.
That's about 9. Yeah, so that's a lot of sleep. It's about 9 hours of sleep. So 9 hours of those 16 hours, you're sleeping. So it's really only about 7 hours that you're not eating food. So say you wake up at 7 a.m., you want to be about 3 to 4 hours with no calories or no food in your system. The reason why that's important, especially after waking, is because your body burns off exogenous food first. So say you stopped eating, if you went to bed at 10 and you stopped eating at 6 p.m., within zero, it takes about 4 hours for your body to go through the food that you just ate. Then it goes into the stored sugar called glycogen, and then it burns through that for a portion of the night, and then it gets to your fat stores. So you want to be able to get to those fat stores. So by morning when you wake up, you really want to continue that fast from night. So you're really getting to the fat stores and getting that, kind of rejuvenative effect and really kind of cleansing and detoxing on a daily basis. It's not as strenuous as, say, someone who's going to do a water fast or extended fast, but just having that daily break allows your body to kind of rest and renew on a daily basis.
And when you are in that fasting period in the morning, does that mean no water, no coffee, no anything, and not just food?
So you're allowed water, and you're allowed anything with zero calories. So water, tea is fine. Black coffee is fine. Some people opt for MCT oil, but that does have calories in it, but it really depends on what your goal is. So a lot of people use intermittent fasting for weight loss, and with that, I would say stick to the 0 calories for sure, because you don't want you want to continue burning off the fat as opposed to burning what you're eating. However, some people will use, MCT oil just to kind of get that ketogenic process going if they're on a ketogenic diet, and it gives them a little bit of energy. So it really kind of depends on what your goal is with intermittent fasting. But overall, I like to say 0 calories. Water is fine, tea is fine, and black coffee is fine. The reason why black coffee is fine is because it does jumpstart that caffeine does jumpstart your metabolism. So if you are doing some sort of weight loss protocol, you're kind of having a double effect there.
I see.
Double meaning the fasting and the caffeine.
Wow. Well, we have a question from someone who's called in, so let me grab this and see. Area code 440. Let's see who this is. Hi, you're live on the air. Do you have a question for Dr. Miles?
Yes. Hi. My name is Patricia. I just called in. What would you suggest, Dr. Miles, for a person who was diagnosed with breast cancer early stage 0-1, about 4 years ago? And it was suggested that the radiation and the lumpectomy first and then the total mastectomy. A woman just did the lumpectomy, didn't do any radiation, but then she does not have, the insurance or money to invest in a naturopathic doctor, the services, or integrative medicine. And what she has been doing was with food. Eating 90%, veggies, about 70% or 80% that is raw, then the others is cooked with some protein, seafood and poultry. What else? It started taking some vitamin C powder, the acerola, putting in her berry smoothie in the morning.
Yes, So making the changes that you're doing is definitely, starting with the nutrition. You've already hit the 90% of plant-based foods. You're getting your nutrients. You're getting your antioxidant support. In terms of the fruits, though, you want to watch some of the higher sugar fruits. So you want to stick to more berries, apples, and pears. You don't want to necessarily do the mango, cantaloupe, watermelon. Those are really high in sugar. So you want to stick to the lower sugar.
What about citrus fruits, the oranges and tangerines? And
citrus is okay. It's higher in sugar, but it's not as bad as like watermelon, cantaloupe, and grapes. You can do some citrus fruits here and there.
Okay. Now, so I heard and did some reading on this turmeric powder, and the one that's used for seasoning. I would just put that and just make a tea from that, not the fresh root. But I realized that can thin the blood. And also I started to use the oregano leaf oil and I'm forgetting the other one, but not together. I'll do one maybe for 10 days of the month. But as I said, that I don't have that income or that money to invest in, the services of, infrared, saunas and, vitamin C IVs and right frequency.
Right. Gotcha.
And of course, everyone's going to be different. So.
Right. So I'd say starting with the nutrition is great. So let's start with things that necessarily don't cost a tremendous amount of money. So water, looking at your water intake, are you getting half your body weight in ounces in water to promote detox? Are you exercising? Exercising increases. Yes. You are exercising. Okay, so you are exercising. You are getting a good sweat from exercising. You don't necessarily need the infrared sauna to promote sweating. If you're sweating yourself, if you're exercising, say with another layer of another sweatshirt on to promote more sweating and more detoxification, you can do a small walk after eating a meal, so that when you are getting glucose in your system, you're immediately utilizing that to from exercising or from walking. You're immediately utilizing it in the muscles as opposed to the cancer cells being able to take them up. You can do things such as, now I don't know the price of it offhand, but you can, if you had an air filter to kind of filter out things from the air of your home, doing cleaning with products that are all natural, even vinegar, apple cider vinegar. Vinegar goes a long way, as a cleaning solution. Making sure that the chemical burden is low in your house. You want to also make sure that you're taking, I would say, take a good, even the multivitamin is a good staple, but make sure you're getting certain forms of some methylated forms of B vitamins are a lot better than, so for instance, B12, you want to get a methylcobalamin as opposed to a cyanocobalamin. Of course, I can't go too much into detail without knowing your history and taking all that into incorporation. So I can't really get into dosages and specific supplements, but make sure you do your due diligence in terms of researching things that are, anti-inflammatory, things that bring down inflammation. A lot of teas with, many different herb combinations in it, teas can go a long way because you can get a lot of different herbs for a lower price. And you can consistently, drink those teas throughout the day to help promote good health in your system.
And, of course, I'm doing energy medicine healing modalities to address and deal with the traumas and abuses in my life. And
that's honestly, that's the
stress,
best.
Getting rid of these toxic people.
Right. So I'd say the majority of cancer patients that I've seen has been it's a result of some sort of emotional issue or something that is some sort of stored trauma. So I am a proponent of energy work, energy healing, meditations, Reiki, all of that is a huge component. And I find that when people have that release, you're on a better path towards better health, but you've really now are living a better life in general, and you've kind of released that emotional burden from your system, and I think that goes a long way in terms of getting back to where you want to get back to.
Yeah, I just have to get these sugar cravings under control. So
actually, I have a little bit of advice for the sugar craving. So, say your sugar craving was candy and cakes. You really kind of have to say you have to slowly go to something that's less sugary. So even though I said to avoid this before,
right.
Pineapples and cantaloupes and stuff like that, that's better than eating cakes and cookies. Yet you're still getting some sugar. So you get you get acclimated to whatever you do for a certain period of time. So even people who are fasting, they're like, oh, I can't stay this long without eating. It's just like, well, you don't have to start with 4 hours. You can do 1 hour, then work to 2, work to 3. After a while, you just get used to it. Even with not eating sugar, if you slowly wean yourself down, you're going to get used to. Blueberries are going to become your dessert, and you're going to be satisfied with that. Now, it sounds absurd now, but when you slowly work towards that, it becomes very easy after a while.
Right. Yeah, so I do thank you, and then I'm working on getting that monies and income where I can invest in, a naturopathic or integrative doctor, and to be able to get those services. But also I know, and I've been reading and researching on keeping my immune and digestive system, which they're both connected, getting that healthy and really stronger in the gut, because they're both connected.
For sure.
All right. Okay.
Well, thank you so much for your call. You've raised some really important questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
And good luck.
Yes, thank you. That was a beautiful question.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You
thank
too.
You. Yeah, this is I find the most upsetting things to me. So many of these therapies are out of pocket, and it becomes unaffordable fast for people who aren't feeling well to start, and they can't work, and then they don't have the income, and then they can't afford this kind of thing. But your answers were so helpful, Dr. Miles, because you gave some great suggestions on how to handle this just from the ground level up. So I'm really glad that you called in.
I completely understand that. I mean, with our services, it's not covered by insurance. It's not. A lot of these things can become expensive. A lot of the times, what I kind of answered to that, especially with even with our appointments, I've even gotten when a naturopath doesn't take insurance, it's like, oh, why don't you take insurance? But it's like I can't. In order for me, I cannot give you the care that I want to give you if I were to take insurance, because I would have to, see a slew of patients in a day, and I would only be able to talk to you for 15, 20 minutes. I mean, if you've gone to some primary care doctors where you're in the waiting room for an hour and a half, but you're only in his room for like 15 minutes, in and out, I wouldn't be able to give you the proper care that I want to give you, and by spending an hour and a half with you. So that's why I choose not to go down with the insurance route, and I feel like I definitely give my patients better service by being not with insurance.
Yeah, exactly. It can be very limiting, and then you're also sometimes stuck with the standard of care nonsense, which doesn't do anyone any good. But also, there is a spiritual crisis involved in illness, right? I know you mentioned body, mind, spirit before in meditation. And this lady, Patricia, who called in, also mentioned getting toxic people out of her life, which that's important too. All of it is.
For sure. I never like to. I always ask in my intake, about traumas, energetic blockages, or things that the patient has gone through in life, because that's such an integral part to what caused your disease. I find that there's always a stressful component or something happened, whether that be a divorce or some. There could be even like a sexual abuse at someone when they're younger. That's something that something that the patient didn't work through or has to kind of uncover that would be at the root cause of your illness. So I mean, the emotional and mental aspect is to me just as important as any physical aspect of the cause.
Yes, I agree completely with that. It has to be a component of healing, or there will be no healing, no matter what you do on the physical plane, in my opinion, because you're right. There is so much that has to be addressed emotionally and spiritually, because we're not just a physical entity. There's more to us than that. And certainly having been a therapist for many years, I've worked with many people who had very difficult childhoods, dysfunctional childhoods, and they didn't have a way back then to work through those types of things. It was, again, there weren't the techniques we have today. And the techniques we have today, which are much more efficient and can break through some of those old pains and hurts that make such a big difference. So it all has to be addressed. So is there any particular type of meditation that you end up recommending to people?
So I like to. So I prefer not following a track. I prefer getting the mind working or being good at, or trying to get better at calming the mind down and focusing on no thought. I know, of course, it's hard, but when you have that ability to kind of control your mind that way, then you kind of control your destiny. So that's why I kind of like not following a specific track and kind of just allowing your spirit to kind of guide you in a way. However, I mean, if you do follow a track, I don't mind that. It's whatever works for you personally. I mean, I meditate daily, say about 20 to 30 minutes a day, but I don't necessarily have a hard out or like when it's done. I kind of just go with my spirit and go with the flow, and whatever comes up, and whatever I need to work through or whatever I can work through, I kind of do. But the whole spiritual aspect and meditation is a huge part of my practice and just my life in general. Actually, I don't know if you know, so my practice is called Attracting Wellness, and I call it Attracting Wellness because I'm a huge proponent of the law of attraction, and that mental state. You have to have that mental state of that you're going to get better, that you see yourself as what you want to be. You see your health picture as where you want to go. Like your health goal is who you are. You're not your disease. So, and I believe in instilling that kind of mindset in my patients. So that's kind of why I named my practice Attracting Wellness.
Oh, I like that. That's wonderful.
That's excellent.
Yeah, that's a lot of what we talk about on the show, too. So let's go back to Epstein-Barr, because that is a very mysterious illness in a lot of ways. And it affects, as you mentioned, so many people. And my understanding about that and listening to Anthony Williams talk about it is there's many different stages of it and many different mutations of it that we don't even have a way to identify yet. Do you find that to be true?
So when I test for Epstein-Barr, I test Epstein-Barr along with a lot of different things. I never look at Epstein-Barr alone, just because the reactivation of Epstein, it's almost like a rabbit hole in a way, kind of like Lyme. I don't want to just see Epstein-Barr as being, the main thing, or seeing Lyme as being the main issue. It's really the environmental factors around that allowed that to flourish, that allowed the virus to kind of take over in a way. So in terms of testing for Epstein-Barr, it's a little ambiguous. So which is why I kind of do a lot of other tests along with the Epstein-Barr. The Epstein-Barr has gotten, like you said, from Anthony Williams, has gotten a lot of light. Because he says that Epstein-Barr is at the root cause of a lot of things. But in order for Epstein-Barr to flourish, there has to be a weakened immune system. So what I look at more is, kind of correcting or implementing things that increase or make the immune system stronger, and that's kind of more what I focus on.
I see. And Lyme disease, do you approach that in the same way?
Yes, I do. I do look at the environmental factors with Lyme disease. However, lately with my Lyme disease patients, I've gotten a lot of them through the RGCC. So just that new modality of the SOT treatment for that has really worked wonders on a lot of Lyme patients. But I do look at a lot of the environmental and gut health of the patient. I know gut health is key to the healing of the gut is really what's key in terms of healing chronic disease, because your immune system does start in your gut. So if your gut is dysfunctional, then your whole immune system is dysfunctional. So I do look at when I look at Lyme, I definitely look at your good bacteria versus your bad bacteria, all the environment like parasites, mold, and stuff like that. So I do look at the environmental picture. I mean, it's a lot. There's a lot of similarities in terms of treatments, because it's a lot of these diseases are environmentally based, and it's not just the infection itself.
Yeah, because there's been a lot of research about doxycycline. So, I mean, that's usually the treatment. You get bit by a tick, you have the bullseye, they give you doxycycline for a number of weeks, and now they're saying it doesn't work.
Well, it's because it's better in acute. If you just got bit by the tick, 3 to 20 days, you want to give an antibiotic. But for the people that are suffering with some sort of chronic picture with chronic Lyme disease, they're going to test positive necessarily for Lyme, and they're still coming up with symptoms. So a conventional doctor is like, the worst thing I've heard is like, you're making it up. But so that's why those conventional antibiotics can't treat that, because what happens after a long period of time is that the Lyme bacteria creates what is called a biofilm, and it kind of hides in the body, and that doesn't get picked up by doxycycline. So we use more herbal protocols and other supplements to kind of uncover the Lyme bacteria, and it's the herbal protocols that really work better for chronic Lyme than the antibiotics.
Well, thank goodness something works, because there's a lot of people who are suffering with Lyme disease. That is for sure. And it can be deadly, which a lot of people didn't know.
Right. Exactly.
So now you have a lot of Lyme patients, you mentioned, that you didn't expect to have, I guess, all of a sudden.
Right.
So, are people is this, again, being transmitted specifically through ticks? I've also heard it's being transmitted through mosquitoes now.
Yeah, and there's even one case that they say it was potentially sexually transmitted.
Oh my God!
So it can be transmitted, through it's mainly through ticks, but a lot of different animals. And then on top of Lyme, you have co-infections as well: Babesia, Bartonella, Ehrlichia, Anaplasma, Rickettsia. There's so many other co-infections that if people didn't test for the co-infections, they may miss an integral part of their disease picture.
Yeah, and it seems like some of these things can be dormant, like Epstein-Barr, and then raise their ugly head, And I would imagine the same could be true of these co-infections from Lyme.
Right, exactly. They can spark up out of nowhere. And usually, again, with times of where the immune system is down, chronic stress, some sort of trauma, and they can just pop up out of nowhere, which is why people generally don't suffer consistently with the same Lyme systems. They have flare-ups.
Right. Yeah, it's just horrible. All of these chronic illnesses are more than a handful. But, again, you have protocols in place. You have wonderful blood tests available through RGCC, and that's for anybody who wants to look it up. It's rgccusa.com. And so you have tools at your disposal that a lot of medical doctors don't choose to have or just don't have, period. Let's put it that way. So you're bringing a lot to the table. When somebody comes to see you, you have a lot to offer, which is really hopeful, because when anybody gets a diagnosis of any of these horrible things, it's terrifying, whether it's cancer, autoimmune, Epstein-Barr. It doesn't matter. It's very scary stuff because there is no one pill that you take to get better. So
right.
There has to be a protocol that you can examine, and there isn't a one-size-fits-all with any of this.
Exactly. It has to be an individualized process, especially when you're dealing with chronic illness, because chronic illness goes all over the place. It's never textbook. What we learn in medical school, it changes when you get to the real world. It's just like the picture never looks exactly what it is in the textbook, and you have to really dig and find out exactly what caused what, or how can you affect the body in terms of improving its immune system or improving the body's resiliency in dealing with disease.
And when it comes to the gut, my understanding is that some of the bacteria that gets wiped out from antibiotic use, it can't come back. It can't regrow. And we're also not savvy enough yet to grow some of these things in the lab. So we can't even duplicate it in the lab and reintroduce it to the system. That makes it kind of challenging.
It does, yes. I mean, sometimes one course of antibiotics can take 6 months to recover from that for some people, and some people found that their gut function is just worsened ever since they had some sort of antibiotic treatment. Or there's been people who and the thing is, sometimes we give these rounds of antibiotics to kids that are 1 and 2 years old, and that's when their body is just developing, their gut bacteria is just developing. And then we even have babies who are actually vaginal birth are at a better advantage than those who are C-section, because when the baby passes through the vaginal canal, they're actually getting the flora from the woman passed on to the baby, to kind of prep them for the external world. So when you have a C-section, you're not getting that advantage. Or for babies who are taken off of breast milk too early and be put onto formula, you're missing a lot of the nutrients that's necessary to prepare you to come into this world. So you're already at a somewhat of a disadvantage coming in if you're not properly prepared.
Right. Oh my goodness, so much. Well, Dr. Miles, this has been just such an informative evening with you. Thank you so much for taking your time to join us today. And I hope you'll come back, because this is a very exciting topic. And, again, you have so much great information. So thank you so very much. And please, again, give your email so people can contact you.
Of course, it's been my pleasure. I love this discussion, and I will be welcome to come on again. And you can contact me at info at drhannibalmiles.com. That's HANNIBALMILES.
Terrific. Thanks again, Dr. Miles. So next week, everybody, we'll be back with another show. And until then, guess what? We'll see you on the Blue Highway. Stay well, and good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks for listening. Tune in next week for another radio adventure with Supernatural Girls.